I've never been live on YouTube, and so, oh, I just figured it out. So I am now like live on YouTube and on Periscope. Periscope's been giving me some trouble, and I wanted to try it out on YouTube. And I'm here to talk about, so it may not look like I'm looking at you all the time as I look around, but I wanted to get on here and talk a little bit about how you think, because I don't think we actually think about how we think. And it's a challenging topic, mainly because we don't think about how we think. I mean, do you know how you think? Do you know what it is to say I think, or I am for that matter? When we get in that space of I am, or we get in that space of I think, I believe that what we're thinking is actually emotional reaction. What the thought process happens as a result of emotional reactions. Hey, Jones. The thought process is secondary. It is the thing that happens after we have that emotional connection to a stimulus, something that happens first. The effort to think is almost immediate. It's something we don't actually push thoughtfully or push purposefully. It's something that happens seemingly on accident. And I think if we don't start to look at how we think, then we get ourselves in a world of trouble. I'm a great example of that. I do that all the time. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But first, I wanted to share part of where I came from in this is, one, talking about the journey to excellence. If you haven't been on the journey to excellence, and something that started back in December, when I started talking to you all about how we wanted to do some self-improvement, improve our lives, improve ourselves, what it is that can move us forward in a way that drives excellence, drives us into a space of new territory, drives us to be better than we were before, which is what I love to help with when we get into working with tarot. And when I work with you, I love to work to drive you to be in a place that is better than you were before. So I started digging around on how we think, because my concern is that in the effort of first having that North Star, the thing that we want to achieve, that goal, that BHAG thing, when you've got that North Star out there and you've worked to create your objectives and your actions so that you can actually achieve those things, then we started focusing on how to think about what gets in our way. What are our own habits? What are those toxic things that we do that hinder or hold ourselves back? Not through problems from other people, not putting the I can't achieve or succeed because there's someone else in my way, but starting here and saying, what is it that I do? What is the thing that I repeatedly do to get in my way? And how can I avoid that, or at least shift or change, right? Once we got past that and looking at our own identity and selves and how that is, then the next thing was to start thinking about how it is that we get to our next stage. And the tarot reading for excellence really lays out a lot of detail in that. So I wanted to provide some more support in thinking about, if you do get the tarot reading for excellence on this journey, what is it that you can do? What is the next step for you? Hey, Rize. In order to be successful on that journey towards excellence. And it's about thinking, because sure, we can be whoever it is that we're meant to be. Sure, we can be considerate of what's going on, Rize, of what our challenges are, and start to work to shift and change those challenges. But what is it that we can do today? What is it that we can do today in order to address the emotional intelligence that causes us to think in order to be more successful on this journey to excellence? And this is a weird, heavy topic. It's not esoteric at all. It's kind of, what I want to say, I can't think of the word I want. I think it starts with an E. Anyway, it's a little out there. It's a little heady to even think about thinking, right? It's not something that's easy. So here's where we're going to go. First, the article that I referenced that kind of got me into this space that that really helped me wrap my head around how do we think so that we can be thoughtful about how we're addressing those toxic behaviors or our goals, objectives, and activities, and our own identity. No, it wasn't ethereal. But thanks, Choir Boy. It's not that. I can't. I'll think of it at some point. Anyway, so the article I'm referencing is actually on Inc.com. It's written by Michael E. Gerber, Gerber. And he actually talks through the idea of what it means to think. And I agree with his hypothesis that thinking is actually emotional reaction that causes us to have thoughts based on our experience. So someone says something or we experience something, hey Jay Rosita, and then we have this emotional reaction. It either angers us or makes us happy or it makes us feel sad. And in those emotional responses, while we're in the throes of it, our brain starts associating experience. And then our experience and our emotional response come together and we have something to say about whatever it is that just happened. And sometimes that happens in seconds, and sometimes it takes overnight, sometimes it takes days or weeks. It is never something that we actually think about. Kind of like when you're hurt and you cry, or you're hurt and you decide to stop doing that thing. You don't really think about it, you just do it. It's because that's that emotional reaction. Your experience tells you, oh, I don't want to do that again, and then you move on. So a tarot reading is very, very similar. There's this deck of cards. This deck of cards gets laid out. There's all of these images that come and inform the tarot reader and whatever skills that they have that are present, either emotional IQ, either psychological, either psychic skill, or other traits that they've learned to work with during the course of their tarot reading. Could also be all of the history that they have about the art that is on the card, or the image that's on the card even. Once all of that is in place, and someone like me, where I'm going to hear, sometimes I'll hear sounds or voice, sometimes I'll look at that picture and it'll shift or change or move and look like something that is a symbol for me or possibly a symbol for you. Then we have that reaction, that emotional reaction. All of a sudden, boom, I'm having an emotional reaction. It causes me to think and provide some sort of response to you. And then that in turn gives you some sort of emotional reaction that causes you to think, swirl around in your brain, and then provide an emotional response, or at least a verbal response back to me. Now, this is how we think, right? We have that emotional reaction. Our brains go through this experience of dredging up the things that we've gone through before, the experiences we've had before, and then we put words to it and we say, well, yes, this is a thing that I can now talk about. So that's how we're thinking. I think one of the challenges in getting through how you think is wanting someone else to tell you how you think. And I think I'm going to keep saying, you may want to feel like other people can tell you how to think because it's just easier that way. It causes you to not have to think. And I believe that that is one of the biggest challenges that we have today. And I think tarot helps you work through that. I think tarot, not exponential, existentialism. I think this is kind of an existential concept when we talk about how we think and relate it to emotions, Hi Wally Gunthunker, and and our experiences, and how that translates into words that actually mean something, which is crazy in itself, right? So one, I think when you start to think about how you think, I believe that you may want other people to tell you how to think, because it's just easier than thinking about how you actually think. But this is important. Thinking about how you think is so critical on the journey towards excellence, on the journey towards self-improvement. If you don't review and observe how you think, that it is an emotional reaction tied to these events that then come out in words, then you can't actually control or change or manage how you are responding in the moment. Believe me, I have been in this space. My initial reaction to things has always gotten me into trouble. Even now, when I've become better at my emotional intelligence, when I've become better at that emotional IQ thing, even now, it is not unusual for someone in a room, I'm in a meeting, for someone to say, Seth, you've been awfully quiet. Why haven't you said anything? You always have something to say. I'm like, oh, well, that's embarrassing. Because that means I'm responding emotionally, but I've only learned that recently for myself. It is so, and it's one of our habits. It's one of those things that we may want to turn on or off as the situation dictates. But when we're younger, and I see this a lot in my, between Steve and I, he's the third oldest nephew, but my sister's oldest son, he does exactly the same thing. And he's so quick to judgment, he's so quick to thought, he's so quick to response, that, and I was the same way, that it gets you into trouble. So I get it. I get that I want potentially other people to either help me understand how to think or to hear what I think very, very quickly, but it's not always the best thing to do. I also think that sometimes in examining this, you might feel like you don't want to think. Like I don't want to think about how I think. I just want to like experience. And if you don't work through wanting to feel like you don't need to think, then I think you're shortchanging yourself. It is so important. I agree. To get all the facts is extremely important. When we're trying to create a response, even though it may happen in seconds, when we're trying to create that response, it's important to get the facts. I did that with my boss recently. He started to ask me a question. I responded immediately thinking I knew the answer, and it turned out he was asking for a totally different set of facts than what I was presenting. But even if he had asked me the full question, because when he responded, well, I don't think that's right, this is what I was going to ask, I still had the same answer. So what I thought he was going to ask was still the same answer, but it wasn't what he was looking for because he didn't know quite how to ask me what he really needed, and we worked that out. But same kind of situation. If you don't have all the facts, you're probably going to give the wrong answer. And I really think if you feel like you don't need to think, what you're trying to do is shorten the, how do I want to say this? You're trying to shorten the value of time that you're assigning to thinking. Meaning you don't want to think about something forever. You just want to respond. But sometimes, and I'm guilty of this too, sometimes I sit and think. Meaning I have had an emotional reaction. I've learned that my immediate response will either get me in trouble or not be favorable or someone won't like it in some way. And so I hold back my response in order to satisfy the desire to speak or share my thoughts and ideas in a way that they'll be accepted. Just like I was doing right now, because I had to think about the words I wanted to relay what I was feeling about the thought. It's about the value of the time that you assign to your thinking, which is why I think people feel like they don't want to or need to think. Because they've reduced the value of the thought. They go, well, I'm just going to throw this thing out there. But it's not true for everybody. Sometimes it happens where the value of the thought can happen very, very quickly. But I think it's something that we devalue in moving too fast. Now, one of the What do you mean? So Lightchild says on Periscope, I think being plugged into spirit has helped greatly. How do you mean? Helped what? Besides thinking. What do you mean besides thinking? How am I doing on battery on here? Okay, doing all right. While you're working that out, I've been trying to think about, if you know how you think, you can change it. And if we don't take the moment to reflect and think about how we think, you can't change it. And change itself is scary. So being connected to spirit gives you the keys to be patient and see the other side of the coin. I found that in my practice too. The more connected I am, the more, I wouldn't say willing I am to listen, the more I actually actively listen. The more I actively listen. Yeah, so I would agree with you. That's true. It's interesting observation. Thank you. I had to take it in, emotionally respond, think about my experience, and then verbally be able to, I'm thinking about the actual process of thinking. Like I'm working through the actual process of thinking. It's an incredible thing what we can do, what our bodies do. It's sometimes unexplainable, but I think this one is. Now, the more I think about the people that are scared to think, or at least examine the way we think, the more I think a lot about a couple things. One, I think leaders, a lot of our leaders today, are scared to think or understand how they think. If they don't actually take the time to observe how they think, they're just thinking off the cuff, and next thing you know, you've got a Twitter account that is spitting out things that can cause a lot of irreparable harm. I also think that men do this a lot because men are used to, I think men in American society, because that's the one I know, I think men in American society are given the opportunity to speak more than their female counterparts. I think they're asked about what they think more than their female counterparts. And when you throw men together as leaders, then it becomes this opportunity for emotional irreparable harm, and that causes a lot of issues throughout the world today, and in the microcosm of an office or even in a household. And I struggle with the fact that we are problem solving so quickly. Yes, Lightchild, I agree that we are problem solving so quickly based on emotional response that we don't actually take the step back, take the moment, think about how we think, resolve that it is an emotional response before it is an experience that is related to that emotion before we speak, and get used to that process so that we can shorten the response time but still be aware of what that emotion is. And that's a whole nother topic, men and emotion anyway, if I were to focus on the male side of things. But still, I think a lot of people are scared to reflect on how they think because it may put them in a space of vulnerability. And that's a lot of our leaders and men today. Another way to think about this is privilege. If you face your privilege, you're forced to examine how you received it in the first place. If you don't face your privilege, then you go about blindly living your privilege and not caring, not being aware, not having any afterthought or forethought about the people who are not receiving the same privilege at your expense. Thoughts the same way. If you're having that emotional reaction and throwing your ideas, concepts, responses out there, it's privilege. And especially when we think about it in the vein of men and leaders. Lightchild, it took me a long time to understand that everybody has their own lens of reality. I love that. Lightchild, I think it's just you and me. I think I scared everybody else off in talking about how we think. And one, either this is extremely boring, or two, change is so scary that it's easier not to think about how you think. And just I keep looking up where I want my camera to be, which is like up here, but it's really over here, which is strange. So that's where we are. Change is scary. And maybe we're going to get into some more tarot stuff here, so I'm going to get there in just a second. So one of the things I wanted to touch on when I get, oh, my hand is so huge. When I get to that idea of change being scary, and that change is scary for everyone. I'm going through a lot of change right now. It's emotionally exhausting, and yet we keep going. And there are some people who can't, and then there are the rest of us that survive. And in that, one of the great fears of change around thinking is that what I'm thinking might be wrong, and what I'm thinking others might perceive as wrong. What I'm talking about right now, somebody may think is wrong, and it's scary to put yourself out there and talk about thinking. Growth is change, and change is growth. Yes, I know that what I'm suggesting for myself when I talk about how we think. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not someone who observes the human mind. I'm someone who observes and discusses human behavior. I'm someone who observes and discusses patterns of human behavior. And I do that with tarot, and through conversation. But I'm scared every day that the things I think and put out into the world are going to be wrong. And yet, for some reason, I've got the confidence to throw it out there. Like child, I plug in, I am a teacher. I agree. Some of us are meant to hone in on those kinds of things and then pass them on to other people and share the experience. And it's not for everybody. And even if I'm scared that what I'm thinking is wrong, or if you're scared that what you're thinking is wrong, it's the same answer is there if what you're thinking is right. What if everything you're thinking is right? If everything you're thinking is right, or if everything you're thinking is wrong, the outcome is the same. Somebody else is having an emotional response and going to give you their answer based on their experience. And that's all the process of thought. Now, why are we even talking about this? So let me bring it back home. We're talking about this because in the effort towards excellence, on the journey towards excellence, on the self-improvement track, if you don't observe how you think, you aren't able to change how you think. And I use those two terms. They're the same term, but they mean very different things. So if you don't observe how you think and come up with a process of how you think, which I believe is stimulus, emotional response, association with experience, and then you align that with some verbal thing, and it comes out of your mouth. And sometimes the verbal is really the sound in your head as you're forming the words to come out of your mouth. That's how you think. And if you get in the space of being aware of that, then you can manage your emotional response in the moment. It might take a little while. It might take years of practice. It might take months. It might take days. Who knows? But if you focus it, this is a great way to be mindful of your response. It's a great way to practice mindfulness. It's a great thing to meditate on. It is a great thing to ask your friends to be mindful of for you and to be aware of, and say, tell me if I'm responding emotionally so that I can recognize it in myself and I can shift and change that type of response should I find it necessary in the future. It's a way for you to be more aware of your actions. I know, as I'm sure others here do, I know I overthink everything. And it's that, I shouldn't say everything. I overthink a lot if it's about myself. Some people, like my dad, will overthink absolutely everything. I agree, like child, mindfulness is the way to truly hear others and understand your own inner voice. If you don't practice mindfulness, and it's a buzzword right now, but if you're not practicing mindfulness, you're missing out. mindfulness is the first step toward personal development through awareness and giving yourself your own power to shift and change the events that are occurring around you in the direction that you want them to go. And I don't know anybody who doesn't want that to happen. So yeah, I over-examine anything that people say about me, so I imagine it's something that other people find challenging as well. It drives my husband crazy. He's like, you always have to think about everything. I was like, well, yes, I do. And I do because I've learned that I need to hold back my response in order to have the best response in order for the most favorable outcome. And if I don't do that, it's not served me well in the past. Where his time, his value of that time is very short. He knows what his response is going to say. She does the thinking, light child, your wife does the thinking piece. Or she responds in time and very quickly. I think everyone should acknowledge that either they do overthink and there's a reason, or they respond in the moment and there's a reason. Whichever one it is, you should be able to control that. And it's not easy to control that. I know I'm not in control of it, and it's something I'm trying to be more conscious of. But why would I even want to do that? Because if I do take the time to be aware of how I think and respond, then what I've done is given myself the opportunity to take care of myself. There is a thin line between those two. I've taken the time to take care of myself. And in taking care of myself, then I know now I am able to take care of others. And you can do the same thing. If you are caring for yourself, if you are on a journey towards excellence, if you are on a journey for self-improvement, then you're caring for yourself. You're doing that self-care that helps you grow and succeed. And if you're not in the position to care for yourself, then you can't care for others. It's impossible. And for those of us that do care for others all the time and have spent our lives being the older brother or the one who knows how to lead or the one who can respond well in a crisis, you need to be healthy. You need to be emotionally healthy, physically healthy. If you aren't any of those things, you can't be there for other people. It's impossible. So I would highly encourage you to get past the fear of understanding how you think. I would highly encourage you to get past any objections of, I don't need to know how I think, I just do and I'm right. I would encourage you to get past that so that you can take that moment of self-reflection and understand how you think so that you can manage it in the moment as you need. You can allow yourself to go for your natural instinct if that's what the situation dictates, or you can allow yourself to manage how you think in the best way possible for the situation at hand. So what I'm hoping is that you're going to be able to, how do I want to describe this? Pick a way you think and be conscious of it. That's where you've got to start. If you're not conscious of it, then you're not going to be able to succeed. And one way that you can do that is by having that resolution, that goal, that North Star that you started with in December or January when we got to past New Year. Start with that North Star and allow that to be a focus so that you're not trying to do it all over the place. Work on this one thing, like be the horse in the carriage and get those blinders on so that you're focused, here we go. So you got one thing going. Once you've got that one clear focus, it's kind of like a science experiment where you've got one place to try this new thing and you'll know if it works or not. So once you've got the science experiment ready and you're ready to focus on observing how you think, do it with that goal that you had at the beginning of the new year and say, okay, I wanted to achieve this thing. I have got my objectives in place, I've got my activities in place, and I'm going to do the thing, and I'm going to see how people respond to it. And as they're responding, I'm also going to be aware of how I think. Is it an emotional response that causes me to reflect and then speak, or is it an emotional response that causes me to just speak? What are the steps of how I think related to the goal that I'm trying to achieve? This is going to allow you to understand how you succeed, how you achieve the things that make you better than you were before. So the effort is focused. The effort is contained, so that you can reflect and see, based on the action you took, this was the result of the action. Now, what the hope is that in doing that, you're going to have some clarity of vision. You're going to know what you're trying to achieve and how you're trying to achieve it, and see the outcome that is coming. You're also going to then, because it's a narrow focus, be able to focus on the right opportunities at the right time. If you clarify what you want to achieve and when you want to achieve it, and allow yourself to be acutely aware of what you're trying to do, then you're going to be successful no matter the outcome. Why? Because you will have learned something, and that's success. It's not failure, it is success to have learned something. So I think if you want to be seen as the person who is in pursuit of what they want, if you want to be seen as the person who knows what they want and is in pursuit of what they want, get on that journey to excellence. Get moving so that you can be successful. Get started. Because if you don't get started, you don't get anywhere. So that's all I got to say about how we think. That's all I got to say about how you might achieve understanding how you think. That's all I got to say about how you can be better than you were before, after having had this discussion with me. So I hope that's helpful. I hope you guys have a great Sunday. I went a few minutes over what I had planned. This is about 30 minutes long. It's a little over 30 minutes. But thank you so much for being here. Light Child, thanks for hanging out through. I should have brought some water with me. This is about time my voice always gets tired. Is at that 30-minute mark. So thanks for being around. Thanks for chatting with me. I hope this is helpful, and I'll see you all later. Thanks.